Hi, everyone. I kindly inform you that I am very honored to be with you. I'm very happy to be invited to the program that enlightens the faces and the sides of the Greek community in Istanbul. A cordially thanks to the esteemed Consul General of Greece, Mrs. Georgina Sultanopoulou, who opened a very important and useful way to start a program. Many thanks to Dr. Savas Chilenis as a program content designer and Mrs. Eva Hladi who organized every detail for my presentation, and Mr. Demir for the technical preparations of the video, and of course to everyone who put all their efforts into this valuable work. Today I will talk about a very important cultural heritage at a silent space in the midst of the city chaos, architecture and art at Şişli Metamorphosis Greek Orthodox Cemetery, which is a very important cultural heritage of our humanity. We know that one of the most significant components of the culture industry is a creative cultural space. It must be our humanity's common goal to protect the human-made cultural imagery and the memory spaces that have been crafted through our differences. In light of this goal, we observe that these kind of projects touch upon two important fields: the art of memory and the culture of remembrance. Within this context, Istanbul the cultural heritage of Istanbul embodies a significant solution and provides a future to our past. This must be our society's common strategy. In this sense, it's every individual's mission to look after and protect the cultural diversity and heritage of our past. I hope there will be plenty projects like this, and we can continue building bridges between our past and our future. So, besides its significance in the area of art and culture, Istanbul is a center that has stimulated the interest of many societies. Throughout history, it's possible to follow the cosmopolitan structure of the city's physiognomy by observing its architecture and art. And going through the cosmopolitan structure, composition comes from the presence of many and variety of colors all over cities' culture and social life. There have been apparent variations in architecture and art, embodying centuries of history. Yet many others variations, such as the monumental tombs, have long been hidden behind the high walls of the cemeteries over many years. Nonetheless, such tombs relate to different religious sects, leaving the city significantly contributing to the cosmopolitan face of the city. So now I can give you some examples from the different Christian sects, especially in the same area, located at the same area of Şişli. Very good. This is the Catholic one, the Catholic cemetery in Feriköy, hosting a lot of, different character styles of graves and tombs, especially with the eclectic style of the, of this period. And except to this, we have also the Armenian ones, the Armenian cemeteries, as you see here. having many, Armenian architectural style details. Of course, we can meet a lot of characteristics like sculptures, architectural details. As you see here, the Armenian type. And of course, in the same region, we have the Protestant cemeteries, of course, with, again, with very important details of art, sculptures, architectural details, and, I think more simple. But if we have to go on with the cemetery in the chaos of the city, we will talk of this silent milieu, I mean Metamorphosis Greek Orthodox Cemetery, and looks like an art gallery, and we know that it's a very rich and varied monumental architectural tombs, located at one of the regions that gave evidence to the rise of the 19th century art and architecture under the influence of the modernization moment of the empire. The cemetery was also the burial place of the families and persons with high level of income. Top level officials and of course senior executives such as Zarifis, Iliascu, Stamatopoulos. My presentation is mainly to examine the architectural characteristics of the tombs in the Metamorphosis cemetery that can be accepted as manifestations of the 19th century as art and architecture of Istanbul. Of course, my analysis, my paper also research aims to analyze and classify tombs according to their various characteristics and present the issue to the attention of art historians. This is another important thing. The study, of course, analyzes the architectural characteristics of the tombs, will provide also a brief historical overview of the status of the Christian cemeteries at Şişli under the Ottoman Empire. So the presentation also presents us the situation of Metamorphosis Greek Orthodox cemetery from the past to present. We have a large number of tombs in the cemetery. Of course, that makes us necessary to focus and refer to the representative sample of tombs. And observations and descriptions will be made by observing this kind of monuments and different architectural characteristics of the tombs. So if I have to give a historical overview of the Christian cemeteries, Taksim and Pera region, we can tell that according to the Christian burial traditions, the interment in the churchyards was a systematic act. However, due to the increase of the population, the churchyards were insufficient to respond to the demand. Therefore, the ecclesiastical authorities and the community chiefs, of course, requested land for the rights and for the interment from the Ottoman authority. Consequently, new cemeteries have contributed to the history and to the art and architectural diversity of the city. Historically, we can tell that the vast necropolises of Eyüp, Üsküdar, and the Grand Champ des Morts in Pera, and the Petit Champ des Morts in the upper part of Galata region were among the most important ones. While the first two cemeteries still survive, the latter two endure only a memory. And this, of course, why with the with the pages of the travel accounts, with the old maps, we can have an idea about these cemeteries. We know that they were described in the pages of the travel accounts, depicted on old maps, of course, and engravings tangibly perceptible in a scattering funerary monuments, for example, that once sorry graced its broad expanse. Especially burial art in Pera, known as Grand Champ des Morts, took the attention of the European cemetery designers. The cemetery entered to a wide range of interest of the famous traveler De Amicis. The traveler describes the cemetery and notices. So here we can see De Amicis. So this is a photo of him. And the traveler describes that after we left the coffee house at Bellevue, we found ourselves at the big cemetery where housed from all religion people except the Jewish that were buried to the sacred graveyard in respect to their sects. That which came in sight like ruins of a building from a distance view was a forest of cypresses and maples illuminated by thousands of gravestones. The Bosphorus and Asian shores are visible between the trees. At the midst of the cemeteries, there are wide roads where the Armenian and Greeks promenade. Turks sit cross-legged on some gravestones and watch the Bosphorus. So shady, so dreamy, and fresh place so. When a person goes in at the heat of summer, can imagine that he is an enormous and dim cathedral. We stopped at the Armenian cemetery. The flat and big gravestones covered by the refined and neatly Armenian letters. And show the art and career of the dead. There are hammers, saws, pens, jewelry, boxes, necklaces. The money changer is represented by scales, the priests by their heads, the barbers by wash tubes, the surgeons by lancets. We went into the Muslim cemetery. Here, there are a lot of columns in heaps, disordered, dispersed. Their tops are colored and gilded. We see the women's gravestones decorated with flowers. Most of them are surrounded with small plants. At the moment that we were analyzing these stones, two Turks, taking a child by his hand, were bypassed and set on a grave, and they opened a pack that they were holding at their armpit and started to eat their food. This is the, cover of his book of, Edmondo de Amicis, and some, illustrations of his book. This is, a site from Pera. And we know that the book is translated, in Turkish language. And another writer, Kevork Pamukyan, mentions the cemeteries lying from Taksim to Pangaltı according to the accounts of Eremya Çelebi Kömürcüyan, who described the 17th century of Istanbul. The two sides of the road lying from Pangaltı to Taksim were coated by cemeteries. Because of that, the Franks were calling the region as Champ de Mort. The author, who describes all the cemeteries by order, cites that formerly the cemetery of Muslims has been located from Kasım Pasha till the English Palace. The Greek cemetery at the right side of the main road was lying till the back side of the Parmakapı Street, where today's Ayatriadas church rises. Between the buildings existing and at the area today, the Greek and the Armenian schools occupies the maximal ground. Even there is no any trace from the graves. The street was recently called at the Greek cemetery as the Greek Cemetery Street. The Frank cemetery was located at the left side of the road. From 1561, only the persons that died from plague were buried here. From 1615 until 1852, the cemetery is left as a cemetery of the Latins. The enlargement of the city calls to the construction of a new cemetery at Feriköy, 1852. Between the cemeteries of Beyoğlu, only the Armenian one is left until 1940. The cemetery that the Kömürcüyan mentions has to be the Armenian cemetery at Bangaltı, where big apartments and parks are standing today. As Amigis remarked, the surroundings of the cemeteries encourage the communion, both Christians and Muslim inhabitants, with the departed. The city of the dead, we know that was a prominent place of the whole population, Turks, Franks, Greeks, and Armenian. It was known to the locals as an area connected with ease and enjoyment. As is understood in close to the residential quarters of Pera, the burial ground served as an attractive area of rest and relaxation for the populace of Istanbul. The famous author of the City of Sultans, Julia Paradu, focused on the relaxation subject and stated, with whatever views they pay these visits, it's certain that the burying ground is their favorite resort, where they spend many of their spare hours. Whole families, parents, and little children around the tomb in silence and seriousness, or in an animated and joyous converse. The grave slab is often their mat, and often the table upon which they spread the cake, fruit, and wine. Between 1840s and 1910, the area of Istanbul, stretching from Taksim to Şişli, was transformed from open countryside to densely inhabited residential settlement. As the urban development around Taksim expanded decades, a transfer process of the cemetery started in 1860s and continued until the beginning of the 20th century. Plague outbreak and cholera in 1865 was another reason for the transfer of the cemeteries. After the transfer, the burial grounds of Taksim region disappeared. Consequently, with the prohibition of the interment of Taksim area, after 1840s, Şişli and Feriköy will be appointed by the Ottoman authorities, and the area will start to house the Christian cemeteries. So let's focus on the position of Şişli Metamorphosis, Greek Orthodox cemetery, in the historical process of the cemetery transfer from Champs des Morts to the Şişli area. The Şişli region was uninhabited on the 19th century. Today is accepted as a popular residential area, as an active business trade center. The Metamorphosis Greek Orthodox cemetery, founded at the northern part of the region, houses at around 36,000 more and more graves. The number of the burials is more than 85,000. The Metamorphosis church, built by the famous architect Valori, Alexander Valori, in 1890s, serves for the mortuary rites. At the northern part of the church, there is also an pareclesion of Saint Apostles and Pavlos, which was transformed as an osteophylakion during the Patriarch Athenagoras I. Another osteophylakion, which is built in 1927, exists at the eastern part of the cemetery. Usually, the osteophylakion is at the surface of the Russian Orthodox Church community. The monumental graves and gravestones manifest that the cemetery formerly was an expensive burial place for those who had a high level of income. The location is still accepted as one of the most expensive burial places of the Greek community in Istanbul, whose population is in decline. The existence of such extravagant cemeteries beyond the walls symbolizes the high level welfare level of the community in Istanbul during the 19th century into early 20th century. The choice of style in the cemeteries expresses the strong ties of the community with the historical background. This is very important. Now let's go on with the, and of course, here I have to tell that the cemetery has also a certificate of membership of Association of Significant Cemeteries in Europe. This is very important. It's this registration is very important for the cultural heritage. And now we can go on with the architectural and sculptural characteristics of some of the tombs. So we have many of my photos are before the restoration of the graves, of the stones, of the tombs. But here I have both the family vault of Zarifis, for example. Now you can see the photo, the slide after this is before, and this is after the, and you see the date, it's 2004. And now we can see the grave, the tomb of Zarifis, the mausoleum located at the southwest of the cemetery belongs to the family Nikolaos and Eleni Zarifis, as you see here. And Nikolaos Zarifis, we know that was a banker that had an important prestige at the society during the Ottoman Empire, for the Ottomans also. The name of the family is written at the upper part, as you see, of the monument. At the corner of the eastern bottom, the name of the architect is visible as Sohos. The monument is surrounded by marble pedestal. The construction is elevated on a platform, as we see, and 3 stairs in steps provides access to the sculptural compositional part. The grave is composed by two sections, let's say, the architectural and sculptural part and the burial part. So if we have to focus on mainly on the architectural and sculptural part, this section is constructed in an antique classical temple design, as you see, very traditional, and of course sits on a rectangular base. As you see, the traditional temple structure is formed into sectional plans. The back plan is wider, as you see here, is wider than the front plan, and two Corinthian columns at the left and right side corners of the sculptural composition can be seen, and on the axis of the front facade. The columns settle on the high pedestals and molded tambours. As you see, the body of the columns is ribbed, if we have to focus on that. The column capitals are formed by two rows of acanthus leaves, and of course volutes, which appear from the second row of the plant composition at the corners of the capital. On the axis of the volutes, there is a flower motif which brings an activity to the composition. The frieze, of course, on the upper part of the on a style of the architectural temple design is composed by a three-stepped architrave on an ornamented molding. On the molding, there is a scripture in Greek that indicates, as you see here, the name and surname, the surname and the name of the family. Another toothed with teeth, let's say, frieze, bounds the scriptural part here. Okay, and the roof ends with a triangle form, triangle pediment, and another frieze you see bounds again. At the middle part of the pediment is ornamented with plant motifs. On the axis of the pediment, we can see a cross. At the middle palmette composition, there is a vase. Of course, we can see here, on the front, on the other part, we can see palmette motifs are used as acrotaires. It's very traditional again at the corners and middle part of the pediment. At the middle palmette composition, there is a vase with curly plants in a Baroque, style. At the middle palmette composition, there is a vase. I told you about the vase with the Baroque style, and we can see directly the ceiling cassettes that were used on the ceiling. A frieze extends exterior on both sides at the back part here of the construction. The frieze is carried by two Corinthian columns, as you see here, one half and one whole on both sides. On the back plan, the frieze finishes, you see here, the engaged one, and the frieze is, finishes with a flat roof. Here, the upper part of the grave. So, and we can see at the corners that the corners are activated mainly by vases with flower motifs. The sculptural, if we have to go on with the sculptural composition, can be accepted as the main attractive point of the monument. The statues give details about the the buried persons of the grave. At the back part, composition, that looks like the Roman, busts types depicting Nicholas Zarifis sitting on an Aeolian column capital. We can find the name and the surname of Zarifis in Greek, and Zarifis is depicted having a mustache and thick hairs. It has a sensitive, a sensitive expression on his look, of course, that can be clearly seen here. His clothes are buttoned up. There is a cloak on his jacket. On the front plan of the sculpture composition, we can see some statues, two statues, a woman and a child. They are standing in front of the the other sculpture, and the child with his left hand upwards is holding a bunch of flower offered to Zarifis. The boy with thick hair is depicted naked. A piece of fabric falling down with drapery surrounds his feet. The mother figure with her left hand up towards Zarifis sculpture, and with her right hand embraces the child figure. She wears a chiton and, of course, a himation. Her cloth that covers her hairs lengthens till her feet. Only one of his feet can be seen from these long cloths. Here, face is rested towards the belly of the boy. She looks upwards. Her eyelids are closed. However, her sensitivity is perceived very clearly. The sculpture producing this art piece tries to give all the essential details like affection, melancholy, solemnity of the figure faces. The drapery details applied on the clothes of the statues are related to the natural expression. And the attitude of the natural realism is can be seen very clearly. And the sculpture shows his knowledge to the Western art, very clearly. The monumental grave complex regarding the temple traditions like columns, column capitals, pediments of the antiquity reflects a neoclassical tendency of the artist. The plant details on the pediment, for example, the acrotes, the vases, the flower motifs, the enthusiasm of the whole construction shows the Baroque influence of the master. So the combination of the styles in an harmony gives the creation of an eclectic structural style of the period. The sculptural composition with the nature observation, reality, and enthusiasm dominates the whole monument. The silent figures stand like the witnesses of the centuries. If we have to go on with another example, I have to focus to the family world of another Zarifis, let's say B, before the restoration. And this is the slide after the restoration. Again, we have the same architect built in 1889. Sohos, one of the most splendid monuments in the cemetery, is located at the southwestern part of the cemetery. Belongs to Zarifis family. And we see there is instructive information that shows the production place, France, Toulouse, and the date, 1889. The monument was built by the same architect who produced the previous one. And the access to the platform monument is possible through two semicircular steps. And the sideways of the building are mounted with two marble plates connected with pedestal, of course, which finish with globes seated to the accountant's sleeves. At the front facade, we can see the four stairs on the platform, which gives access to the grave. This is constructed in a rectangular plan. I want to skip and come to the important details of the grave, of the tomb. We can see again the most, before to come to the most impressive part of the grave, the structural composition. Again, we can tell that there are the tomb is constructed on a Greek temple tradition, and the columns used on the entrance are in square section. The columns are, vertical strings on various lengths. At the bottom of the flutes, the column parts left without flutes are activated with cross motifs emerging from the globes. This is very interesting, and we can also see, and the inscription also. The column capitals are designed in Ionic style. You can see the Ionic style here. Between the volutes there is a row of string, you see, ornamented with planted motifs. This is very interesting. The columns finish with two-stepped square capitals, and the construction continues with an architrave and frieze composition on the upper part, and the corners of the architrave are ornamented with ram heads again, and of course you can see here the activation of the architrave, and the monument ends with three-stepped roof construction. The framework of the roof is formed by stepped trig leaf motifs. The roof is crowned with a planted cross detail. The back facade, this slide shows us more clearly the detail, the upper detail. And the ceiling is ornamented with cassettes in an antique temple tradition. The inner part of the architrave is, you see, is activated with an, act array. And the burial part stands at the part of the back part of the construction. The most impressive part is here, of course, the sculptural composition. The scene expression overflows from inside to the exterior. The main figure is at the inner part of the monument, is lying dignified on a bed, and the bearded and thickened hairs figure depicts again Zarifis. And his, of course, the brother of him, his dorsal side leaned on a pillow, his right hand holds an open book, and his left hand bears on the pillow. We can see his clothes that are carved in details. He wears a suit and a shirt. His face resembles, of course, to the family, to his brother, on an aristocratic look. Combines the dignity and the affection. The figure manifests the mastery by giving the natural observation of the sculpture, who exhibits all the individuation of the depicted character, the grandeur and the embroidery of the bad show of the prosperity. The two figures are standing in front of, are very interesting, in front of the bed of Zarifis. The woman we can see her from the backside, and to the exterior is climbing the steps of the monument towards the main figure. She wears a chiton mation. Her hairs are covered with a long scarf, headscarf. Her left hand stands on the column, and with the other she holds a little girl. The construction of the tomb manifests the tendency of the architect very clearly towards the classical Greek architecture. The dominancy of the classicism is dispersed with the Baroque details, especially used at the ornamentation. The classic and the Baroque sculptural composition are very important. The traditional Hellenistic sculptural details can be seen at the mother figure, the mimesis, the anatomic observation, the movement positions of all figures prove the mastery of the artist. If we have to go on for another example, we can talk about Iliescu family vault. I told you that I have many of my slides are before the restoration of the of the cemeteries tombs. This is this vault is built on 1883. We know the name of the architect as Panayotides. The monument is located at the north east of the cemetery. It's constructed in a Greek temple order. The grave belongs to a banker family who lived at Galata. The name of the architect appears at the bottom of the right corner. The inscription is Tombros Atelier, indicates the production center of the construction at the bottom of the left corner. The tomb is elevated on a platform. On the axis of the front face, there are two steps who give access to the burial room. So, the facade is activated with Corinthian columns, as we see, engage one and all ones. The capitals with acanthus leaves finish with an abacus with rosettes at the center part. The marble walls of the burial room have Corinthian columns engaged here at the corners, on both sides. The columns on the front facade are connected with an architrave, here, on both sides. The engaged columns on the contrary of front ones are fluted. The monument is covered with a two-sided roof. The lower angles of the roof are ornamented with acroteres, and a cross is placed at the highest part of the building. The inner part of the cornice has stepped moldings and toothed friezes. The ceiling is ornamented with cassettes, and an arch frames the twin windows. You can see here the windows as we can see at the middle part. The apse is covered with a half dome at the back side. The engaged column composition is repeated again on the back side. So the architects, we know that, applied the classical period temple tradition on front of and side facades, and retraced from that tendency at the back facade of the monument with the application of the apse. So of the apses. The keystone of the building is formed with a Baroque implement, as we see here. Stamatopoulos family grave or vault, 19th century, anonymous architect. The family vault is located at the northern part of the cemetery. It's circled with pedestals and broad with a perforet. The architectural construction sits on a square platform. The square plan grave is ornamented with engaged columns on the facades. The columns are seating on square pedestal. Here, the pediment is ornamented with rosettes. And of course, the acroteres are disposed at the angles, as we see. The door of this style can remind us also Andrea Palladio's style. And the pediment is ornamented with rosettes. As I told you, the door of burial room is constructed by iron. The column architrave frieze composition is repeated on back and side facades. This is a very, a cross at the middle part. We can see we can face the cross. Okay, and the dome sits on a high, part, and it's activated with the engaged columns across, as I told you before, as it can be seen very clearly. This is very, neo-Renaissance tendency. So the architect had a tendency of the neo-Renaissance style, very noticeable, with a dome and classical details that appear on the facades. The grave is a unique example at the cemetery. Another unique detail is at the beginning of the 20th century is the family, the grave of the tomb of the Zenoviaka family is located at the eastern part of the cemetery. It belongs to the Russian Orthodox, to a Russian Orthodox family. There is no any detail that refers the name of the architect, date of construction and burial dates. The rectangular planned construction sits on the rectangular basement, as we see. There is an access to the burial room as possible with 2 steps. The corners on the front facade are ornamented with extended pillars, which, and the pillars sit on square pedestals. And of course, we can see their capital are mainly in geometrical forms. And at the inner part of the there is a pointed arch and 2 arches. And we can see that at the inner part of the pointed arch, 2 semicircular arches were designed in relief. You see here. Oops. You see. And a figure of an angel in relief stands on the axis. The borders of the pediment are ornamented with folded branches. The sideways are designed very simple, and the pediment composition is repeated on the back facade on the grave. The architectural design of the monument is programmed on a neo-Gothic order. The details, like the pointed walls, as we see, the order of the covering, the pointed hoods, and the garland placed like a rosa's window, here you see, are applied and remain true to the neo-Gothic structure. The tomb of Negropontis, built in 1867. The monument is located at the southern part of the cemetery. The name of the dates are defined on the pedestal of the monument. The monument is surrounded with an iron construction carrying cross motifs, but we know that looks like a neo-Gothic style. And the monument stands on a high rectangular pedestal. The pedestal is ornamented with garlands, as we see, and the scriptures. 6 Corinthian columns in a circular shape are connected with circular ornamented friezes. And the dome is bordered, the upper part is bordered with acrotiles at the borders. And the inner part of the ceiling is ornamented with cassettes. At the middle part of the columns, a nude child. Here, a nude child statue is standing frontally. The unique example of the cemetery is applied in a neo-classical order. The master of the monument shows his tendency to the classical Greco-Roman architecture. The point that retreats from the classic details is the statue of the child, which is applied in a neo-Baroque style. The Lord of Spiridon family, 19th century. The tomb is located at the northern eastern part of the cemetery. It's constructed on a prostylos plant temple tradition on a square platform. The front facade has twin columns at the corners. The Ionic column capitals are placed on high pedestals. The lower part of the columns is very simple, without refuse. here. And the pediment is formed by a molded architrave and tissed frieze. See here. And a pediment terminates the roof. At the inner part of the pediment, there is a planted motif combined with an counter sleeve, and of course, and a cross at the corner, at the axis. The angles of the pediment finish with the acrotax, as we see here. And the door construction of the burial room is framed with a semicircular arch. And on the axis of the arch, there is a Roman keystone. The sideways of the arch is activated with twin engaged columns. And the architect, we know that he wanted to produce his work related to the classical temple order and style. However, the ornamentation details at the inner part of the pediment and at the upper part of the acrotaires are applied in a Baroque style. This is eclectic, of course. The tomb combines the neoclassic order with the neo-Baroque details in an harmony and gives, of course, an effective example to the eclectic style. Let's go on to the Spiridon Petalas vault, 1890s, is located at the eastern part of the cemetery. The tomb sits on three-stepped rectangular platform. It's constructed with a tendency of a classical monument of the triumph, Arch of Triumph. Four columns carry the upper part, composed by an architrave and a frieze. And the composition finishes with a pediment. The fluted columns of the tomb are in Corinthian style. So the design of the architect preserves the traces of a Roman arch of triumph details. Let's go on to Casanovas, Georgios Casanovas, 1895. We notice the name of Casanovas as an architect. The tomb is located at the northern part of the cemetery. In spite of the identification of the architect, as on the lower part of right corner, there is a statement that the work belongs to Ziot. The monument sits on a square platform. The walls of the building are constructed by massive stone blocks, as we see. The building is designed on a prostylos planned temple tradition. The Ionic four columns, as we see here on the front part of the tomb, are based on square pedestals. And here the upper part is consisted by an architrave and a frieze, where the name of the tomb owner is written. Of course, the pediment is crowned with, the upper part is crowned with a pediment. The inner angles are repeated at the backside. And the burial room does not have any door, which makes possible the direct access. The masters are related to the classical architectural type design. The simple and limited ornamentation of design shows the accordance of the accordance to the main style. Bernoulli's vault, 19th century, and the family vault is located at the eastern part of the cemetery. It's constructed on a square platform. The columns are connected with a semicircular arches, but we can notice a design of Neo-Byzantine style. The embroidery of the capitals here. If you notice the capitals, we can see the, of course, the Middle part of the capitals has cross motifs, of course. The columns are connected with it, as we show you before, the semicircular arch. The plate continues with a pediment. Here, it forms a niche, as you can see. The niche has a large, high, and deep, flower bed. And the outskirt of the pediment is ornamented with motifs, with plants, and with an anthemion. At the middle part of the angle, there is a cross in the middle here, and two easels at the sideways, lower than the front memorial part and largest the memorial part of the tomb. The artist, of course, shows the tendency to the Byzantine tradition, especially column capitals. The ornamentation details here are mainly influenced by the details of the Byzantine style of the Byzantine church. Let's go to the Lambrotidu family vault. Lambrotidu vault is located at the northeastern part of the cemetery. The tomb is constructed in a church characteristic. So the building is covered with a two-sided roof and a dome. And it's elevated on a high platform, as we see. So it has a lot of houses, a lot of reliefs here. And it's very interesting because in the upper part of the door, which has a radial motif. Here you can follow the reliefs. The reliefs depict the nativity, the pietas, crucifixion, the archangels, Michael and Gabriel. The scenes are framed with string and knitted motifs. And the upper part of the door is ornamented with as I told you before, with a radial motif depicting a triada is in a meadow. This is very interesting. And the door is framed with grape leaves. You see here. On both sides of the door, the depiction of the tomb owners are depicted on low reliefs. So, on the upper part, we can find also the two letters A and Omega, identifying Jesus Christ's appearance. At the middle inner part of the high angle, there is the mandilion, which is very important depiction for the iconography. The dome sits on a high ornamented, part, and the eastern facade of the building finishes with an apsis covered with a half dome. The above defined structure, influenced by a Byzantine architectural plan or a church plan, demonstrates the neo-Renaissance tendency also of the architect. Besides the style of the figures depicted on the reliefs, emphasize the nature observation of the artist, especially the approach to the realism on the figures gets lighter with the use of the famous iconographic depiction of the Byzantine style mandilion. The radial motif here shows the tendency to the symbolism. The door composition at the middle part is a pure representation of the iconostasion door, which opens to the sacred space of Aia, Trapeza, and to the apse. Another example that belongs to Anagnostidu family, located at the eastern part of the cemetery. Here we can find two columns on the front facade placed at the corners, and we can find also at the other part on the back side some engaged columns on the black plate that are designed with a stringed echinus and simple abacus. The front columns are connected with an architrave here, and of course they have and continues with a garland ornamentation here again. And the inner side of the pediment has activated with acanthus and moldings. The back plate here of the tomb that we see as a planted motif from where a cross comes out. The side facades are connected with lower plates. The tomb is designed in a classical revivalist style. The influence of the Roman triumph of arches is exhibited at the tomb, with the difference of adding the plate at the backside here. A Blesa family as an obelisk. The family vault is located at the eastern part of the cemetery. Here we can see an artist that composes a memorial obelisk, which we confront mainly at the Egyptian and Roman periods. And so the pedestal, we can see that the pedestal is activated with concave and convex moldings. The gravestone is formed by an obelisk, as I told you. The obelisk is a square sectioned pyramidal form. And the burial part is located at the southern part of the obelisk. Another example is the tomb of Galitzis that I took, located at the western part of the cemetery. Is designed in a simple form, in a cross-shaped stele. The burial part at the front part of the stele is constituted by stepped platforms. And the depiction of Jesus Christ here on low relief is carved on the tomb. He wears a chitone himation. His clothes are flowing down in accordance with the realism of the gravity. His halo is consisted by rays. He sent downwards, holds an olive leaf with his left one. The dignity on his posture is depicted in a natural observation. Pangiris tomb, 20th century. The tomb is located at the eastern part of the cemetery. It's a very unique one. The rectangular planned construction sits, of course, in a rectangular platform. 2 steps on the front facade provide the access to the burial room, which is closed, of course, with a rectangular door. At both sides of the room are ornamented with 3 sectioned vertical motifs, and the vertical motifs are composed by a lotus that finishes with a cross, with crosses, as you see here. The covering is constructed by a flat roof, and the upper part is activated with the semicircular shaped marble struts. At the middle part of the of the upper part, we can see on the axis there is a depiction that attracts our attention. The depiction of open, wings of the Egyptian god Horus, like an Egyptian god Horus. At the middle part of the wings, a cross motif shows a very distinctive approach at the tomb, even at the cemetery. The work is a unique example in the cemetery. The Egyptian architectural details, the Egyptian mythological knowledge manifest the influence of the artist to the Egyptian characteristics. And if I have to conclude and give some explanations about the whole work of our observation, the observations at the Şişli Metamorphosis Greek Orthodox Church reveal the existence of different tomb styles, as well as some particular unique ones. The examples mentioned in our presentation, in my presentation, throw a light in the abstract on the tomb orders and styles of the cemetery. The tombs that exist in the cemetery have to be evaluated as being, 19th and century architectural artworks of the hidden, besides the thick walls of the cemetery. So the monuments have to be evaluated as the architectural and sculptural examples of the mentioned centuries. Regrettably, there is limited information about the name of the artists and architects carved on the tombs. The name producers of the artworks are not also founded on the cemetery records very well. So, however, their contributions to the urban texture and cultural heritage are so large. So furthermore, the monumental preference, the types and styles of the tombs summarize the economic and social level also of the buried people here. But it's put in a different way, put it differently. The tombs can be accepted as talking monuments here. The extensive monumental production that phase on the 19th century, at the beginning of the 20th century, will start to diminish after the mentioned, centuries. Due to the decrease of the Greek Orthodox community, here, day by day, the burial of different social classes, the diminishing apply to the artists and to the architects for tomb production, the expensive labor cost will cause to the production of simple, without or a little ornamentation, minor dimensional tombs. The tombs are composed from a rectangular shaped burial place covered by a simple marble plate and a gravestone defining the name of the family and of the buried person. Anyhow, now those kinds of tombs are preference for all communities and societies of the whole world. So research, this kind of research reveals also different categories. This, for example, presentation revealed different categories of tombs, except the unique and regular ones that I mentioned here with my slides. A category of tombs can be the monumental buildings constructed on traditional classical temple style, like the tomb of Zarifis, like the Georgios Kazanovas, Negropontis, Spiridon Vault. Those are the manifestation of the mentioned category. The models demonstrating the Greek and Roman temple designs mainly were built in Prostylos and in an Antis plan. The use of the Dorian, Ionian, and Corinthian orders and styles are repeated on the monuments. A second category is the tombs applying church architectural plan and orders. The reflection related to the mentioned category stated in my presentation were the tombs constructed, for example, for the family Lambrotidou, applying the cross-planned architectural design for Stamatopoulos with a cross-planned, with a high, dome. And for the family of Zenobiaka, reflecting the details of Gothic cathedrals, for example, and for Bernoulikis, applying the ornamentation detail of Byzantine church. Another category is the category showing particular details of Roman Arch of Triumph design, like the models of Spiridon Petalas and Anagnostilou. The number of this example is limited. However, this not blocks us to categorize them. Other categories are constituted by the obelisk models, like the monument of Blesa, by styles like the tomb of Kalitis. Unique designs like the tomb of Panziris are contributing to the multicolored and wide range tomb to the cemetery. Our observation at Şişli Metamorphosis Greek Orthodox Church proves that the passion to the classic revivalist style dominates the 19th century at the beginning of the 20th century's tomb architecture. Even the applied eclectic style, especially with the combination of Baroque and classic style harmonically, is the preferred style of the mentioned century. The dominancy of the neoclassic orders and styles such as temple plans, Dorian, Ionic, Corinthian column capitals, pediments, the architraves, metopes, and on the friezes, and acrotaires, ceiling cassettes, ornamentation details are manifesting the affection of the Greek Orthodox community to their origins. The desire of expressing their culture is exhibited in their tomb architecture, whereupon the importance of the tomb architecture and sculpture has to be emphasized to the art historians, evaluated, conserved, and protected as monuments of our cultural heritages. Otherwise, the tombs, because of the diminution of the community, and the lack of their, consecutives, will stop to be the witness of the history of manifestations of the architectural examples of centuries that they have been built. Thank you very much. Thank you.